It's one thing to have a typo or a misspelling in your opening line, but having one in your title? Hello world, and welcome to my channel, where I share my writing journey, talk about books, and even, on occasion, shake things up. Another month has come and gone, which means that it's finally time for another episode of the top 10 best and the top 10 worst opening lines in paranormal romance this month. And boy, let me tell you, we have some gems in both categories this month. Before we get started, I would just like to mention that these lists are intended to help my fellow authors promote the books that they're releasing, well, last month, and not to hurt anyone's feelings. If one of these books intrigues you, by all means, feel free to check it out using the links in the description below. And if you happen to be an author whose opening line appears in my top 10 worst section, take heart. This list is just for fun and is comprised based entirely upon my own opinions. The quality of an opening line, much like the quality of an entire book, is an entirely subjective experience. And you are in no way a bad writer just because your first opening lines didn't really appeal to me. Thank you for being brave enough to put your work out there to begin with, as well as for providing a valuable learning experience to everybody watching. And of course, to all my viewers, if you enjoy my work and would like to help support it, please comment below, like this video, subscribe to my channel, and ring that bell. Let's get into it. Coming in at number 10, we have Protecting the Alpha, the Submission Trilogy Book 3 by Amelia Rose. Hot, heavy, heaving, fingers trembling, eyes burning, neck scorching, I collapsed into the bathtub, desperate to cool off, desperate to ease all this pain, desperate to stop feeling all this fiery vengeance rushing through every one of my bodily veins. My body roasted in the frigid tub as sweat rolled down my forehead. I turned on the cold water, letting it pour out of the faucet and gush against the bare side of my neck, hoping to the moon goddess that it cooled me down. I like this opening line for several reasons. One, it's very genre specific. You can tell right away from the first couple of words, hot, heaving, that this is probably a romance book, and a steamy one at that. Then, it progresses to a slightly less romantic tone and makes the reader feel as if the protagonist might be in some sort of danger, or at least some sort of agony. I like the sensory details, and the mention of the moon goddess clues me in that this is not just a romance book, but a paranormal romance book. So, nicely done there. It caught my attention, and I would read more of this. Coming in at number 9, we have Fighting for His Mate, Everton Falls Mated Love, Book 4 by Ava Gray. Thunder rolled across the sky, and I gripped the mug of hot tea in my hand tighter at the booming sound. Soon after, lightning flashed outside the rain-streaked window. There was a nasty storm raging out there, but it wasn't the reason that I was sitting on the living room couch at early midnight. I was waiting. Ooh, waiting for what? I love that final ending 3 words right there. It really created an impact. I also am a sucker for storms. I know that I've admonished openings in the past that have begun on the weather because it can be a bit risky. It's not always relevant to the story at hand. But in this particular instance, I think it helps ratchet up the suspense a bit. So it's nice to see an exception to that rule. Coming in at number 8, we have Inshallah, Bloodstained Heart, Book 3, A Middle Eastern Vampire Romance by Helen Allen. The bird caws, its tone anxious, and I snort in exasperation as I stand on the dunes, staring at the dark, roiling waters. Go away if you cannot tell me anything useful, I mutter. You should be asleep now, anyway. The raven makes a peeping sound as though annoyed and begins to preen its feathers. To human eyes, it would be invisible where it sits in the lee of the dune. To my vampire eyes, its feathers appear to glow an otherworldly blue in the moonlight. I liked this opening line because I have a real soft spot for crows, ravens, and other corvids. They're incredibly smart, and I just get happy when they're mentioned. I know that's silly, but you know what? That's one of my personal reasons. I also liked the description of the bird's feathers as glowing that otherworldly blue. And more developmentally speaking, I like the fact that the protagonist is telling this bird to go away if you don't have anything useful to tell me. I wonder what she's up to. Useful in pertaining to what? It makes me wonder what else is going on in this story. Coming in at number 7, we have The Vampire Vow, Book 3 of the Scorned by Blood series by Heather Renee. They were dead. I'd finally found my people, and they were gone. Burned to ash right before my eyes. I didn't know how I was supposed to process their deaths, or what I was supposed to do once reality set in. All I knew was that the longer we stared at the inferno of Micaiah's house, the fewer tears I cried, and the more fury I felt. This was definitely an attention-grabbing opening line. It introduced death immediately, and that feeling of a family finally found and lost, and the fact that her tears are fading and her rage is starting to build definitely sets the stage for the protagonist to move this story forward in a way that could perhaps cause her more trouble. I would be interested to read on. Coming in at number 6, we have Rise of the Wild Moon, New World Shifters Book 3 by Kimberly Loth and Nina Walker. The blood moon shines down over the carnage as if to mock us. I've seen a lot of gore in my life, but the scene before me is by far the worst. Death hangs heavy in the air, and the stench of it makes my stomach churn. The last shred of innocence I have left urges me to run away, but I can't. I have to face this. I'm with the resistance, so I knew this attack was coming, but I never expected it to be so ruthless, for so many to die. I liked this opening line because, once again, it hooks you right off the bat with the threat of death. And like the opening line before it, we have a protagonist who is shocked by the violence before her, and we're kind of left wondering, what is she going to do next? I would absolutely be curious to see how this story progresses. Number 5, Alpha's Revenge, a Special Forces Shifter Romance by Renee Rose and Lee Savino. Moonlight glints off the black surface of Lake Como. The villas and their private estates are all silent as I slink past cypress trees and neatly trimmed boxwoods to my destination. Alpha 1, are you in position? Channing's voice is a whisper in my earpiece. Not yet, I mutter into the tiny microphone transmitter embedded in my collar. I'm wearing nothing but a stretchy black bodysuit that will allow me to shift into a wolf if I need to. If all goes to plan, I won't need to. In the meantime, I look like a cat burglar, which is appropriate. Tonight I'm a thief, and the target is the 18th century villa built into the side of the mountain. You guys know I love shenanigans. We have a werewolf shifter who's clearly up to something. Looks like an act of thievery of some kind, so that's interesting. I wonder how it's going to go wrong. The only way to find out is to read on, so good job there. Number 4, Blood and Madness, The Witch Monsters, Book 3 by Sarah Piper. Terror. It vibrated from my demon's very soul as he paced the oily street in front of the facility, raking his hands through his hair. Hudson landed and set me on my feet, and when Jax looked up and met my gaze, I saw it right there in his eye, that raw, unguarded fear that could only mean one thing. Whatever had happened, Elian was in bad shape. Once again, suspense right off the bat. We know that the protagonists are in trouble. We know that there's some sort of terror going on, which I definitely would hope to learn more about in the coming pages. Man, there's a lot of death in these. I keep looking for the romance, and I'm hooked by the suspense of these and by the drama of what's going on. I'm just looking for the love, man. Where is the love? But it was still good, and I enjoyed it. All right, we're into the top 3 now. A Letter to 3 Witches by Elizabeth Bass. What is she doing in there? Tanith's magic lamp draws her so near the glass that her breath fogs its surface. In her perplexed impatience, she's breathtakingly beautiful. Almond-shaped green eyes reflect like gemstones against the glass, and her hair blacker than mine drapes over her shoulders, tantalizing me. Sometimes that hair swings when she moves and I can't take my eyes off it. In bed at night, I often reach a paw out to touch its silkiness, though only lightly, careful not to wake her. Nothing angers Tanith more than disturbing her sleep. Seriously, objects get thrown. She has good aim. I liked this opening line because it kind of hinted right from the outset that it was a romance. We have a description of how beautiful this Tanith woman is, as well as a bit of comic relief at the fact that when she gets woken up from her sleep, she gets grumpy. I'm sure we can all relate to that. So I liked this, and it was kind of a relief from all of the heavy opening lines that I had just read. Right, coming in second place, we have Lost Kingdom, Darkfell Vampire Clan 3 by L.A. McGinnis. My dream was always the same. Destin seemed real when I ran my fingers down the sharp planes of his face and felt the rough burr of his whiskers. When I tasted the faint trace of my blood on his lips, felt bones jut out of his too thin body as I hugged him closer, trying to keep him warm. His prison cell was little more than a rock shelf overlooking the stark mountains and craggy, snow-dusted ravines, where the stench of brimstone and black magic corrupted the air. His dark, staring eyes devoured me, nuanced with warning and anger. But despite everything, when I was inside the dream, I never wanted to wake up. Right out of the gate, we know that this is a romance. We can feel the protagonist's longing to be with this person again, even if it's only in a dream. And we can also kind of feel their desperation because he's in a lonely prison cell, too thin, probably in a bad way. I felt very grounded to this story. I liked it, and to me it seems indicative of a story that's going to deliver a heavy romantic plot ahead, which is what I look for in a romance. So, good job, nicely done. And finally, coming in first place, we have A Murder of Queens, After Darkness Falls, Book 7 by May Sage. Coldness had never felt so sweet. The trees shook and the lake shuddered under the assault of the wind. He stood alone atop the hill, eyes closed, letting the breeze, the rain, and the thunder caress him. Once upon a time, he would have given just about anything to feel the air on his skin again. Anything but this. Anything but her. This one caught my attention, because you would think that he would want to feel her again, whoever her is. Who is she, and why does he dread feeling her so much? Why does the cold feel sweet compared to warmth? This one surprised me a bit, but it still gave me sensory details and grounded me in the scene that was unfolding, and it still gave me the hint that this is going to be a love story. I liked the subtlety of the opening, and I liked the bittersweetness of it. For that reason, this book is coming in first place for the top 10 best opening lines of January 2022. Congratulations to all the winners this month. Let's get on to the others. Just as a reminder, if you are an author who happened to find your book on this list, please don't think that this means that you are a bad writer, because you are not. This list is for entertainment purposes only, as well as to perhaps provide a bit of an educational tool for those of us who are interested in improving our own work and learning from others. Thank you so much for the valuable opportunity to explore what makes an effective opening line. All right, coming in at number 10 on my list of top 10 worst opening lines in January 2022, we have Shifter's Love Curves by Amanda K. Mann. Sitting in a cold exam room was not what Sierra had planned to do the moment she got back to Mossgrove. As a new resident, she had wanted to be able to spend some time getting familiar with the town and its inhabitants, who were now her new neighbors. She had wanted to be able to enjoy the time off of school. Unfortunately for her, though, she had caught a stomach bug that just wouldn't let up, and her best friend Annika had insisted that she go and make sure it wasn't anything more serious. Throwing up every day for the last month or so wasn't exactly normal. So this opening line could have definitely been worse. We have an idea of what the protagonist's situation is. She just moved to a new place, yet she finds herself sitting in an exam room, not feeling well. All right, it didn't really grab my attention because it did a little bit of info dumping. I understand the impulse to want to just tell your reader everything at once, but I feel like there are more gripping details that we could have been introduced to the scene with. Perhaps some sensory details, maybe something that would clue us in that this is a paranormal romance. It wasn't genre specific, and it invited the reader in a little bit, but the amount of information kind of dumped on us right in the first paragraph put me off of it. Coming in at number 9, we have Smoke and Mirrors, The Witches of Wheeler Park, Book 9 by Christine Pope. Jasper Wilcox bounced along the rutted road that led to his cabin and tried not to grit his teeth. It wasn't as though he wasn't used to the dirt surface being in pretty much the same shape every spring. Sooner or later, the Forest Service would send a crew in to grade the road and get it in shape for the hordes of hikers and other outdoor enthusiasts who descended every summer. But it was way too early in the season for that. In Flagstaff, you weren't really past the threat of snow until early May, and so we still had about 6 weeks to go. So while I was reading this opening line, I stumbled a couple of times. And if my brain is stumbling over the text, I'm kind of pulled out of the story. Additionally, the opening goes on after this with, again, more info dumping. I don't care about the road, the condition of the state park, or the surrounding details of the setting. Show me the character, show me why I should care about them. I wanted to be more emotionally grounded in this story by the time I finished the paragraph, but I didn't really care too much. So, for this reason, this book comes in at number 9. Number 8, we have The Best of Both Wolves by Terry Spear. Everything had been looking up for Sierra Redding, a retired Army finance officer, since she'd moved to the Portland, Oregon area before Christmas. At least she thought that. After a day of working in a mixed media collage intensive workshop for teachers, she was excited and looking forward to setting up official art assignments for wolf kids of all ages in the Red Wolf Pack, starting on Monday. The job was just a part-time one, but she had her Army retirement pay, and that was all she really needed. This opening line is genre specific. We know that she's talking about wolf kids and the Red Wolf Pack, so there is that working in its favor. I just didn't feel particularly gripped by it. I, again, don't prefer lines that start with a bunch of information first. I want to feel grounded in the scene with sensory details, a sense of urgency, romance, something to let me know that this book is going to make me feel something. And unfortunately for this opening line, it gave me a lot of information, but it wasn't information that particularly interested me. All right, coming in at number 7, we have His Mate, Brothers, Ain't Gettin' None by M.L. Ryers. No, that doesn't work for me, Vanessa sighed into the mobile phone that she held to her ear and rolled her eyes to the star-studded heavens as she cursed in tongues within the privacy of her mind. Because you need to pick me up. Here I am, carless, and in need of a ride, because you took off like a bat out of hell and left me stranded. Vanessa was oblivious to the looks that she was getting from the burly doorman that had been stationed outside the bar. Over 6 foot tall, with muscles that were barely contained within the confines of a well-fitted shirt and a long shagged beard, he cleared his throat and drew her attention his way. So this opening line kind of did the, well, you see, Bob thing. And I try to be forgiving of that, but it just kind of jarred me right out of the opening. Hold on, I hear my baby crying. There were also several clunky sentences which I kept stumbling over. And then there was a few mistakes, such as he cleared his throat and drew her attention his way. Nah, this sentence, it just didn't do it for me, sorry. Next up we have Bounty Claimed, Solstice Huntress 2 by Lindsay Devon. All right, Oscar, I said. Are you ready for this? Oscar curled his tail around his feet and tilted his head to the side, blinking his big yellow eyes at me. He was perched on the kitchen counter, which I usually don't allow, but I understood his need for a better vantage point for this important inaugural experience. Now, at first brush, this opening line didn't strike me as too bad. The reason it ranked lower than the last opening line, which admittedly had more mistakes, is that this one just didn't really grip my attention very much. I like cats, but even after this paragraph, it just goes on and on like this, and I'm not really sure where the story's going or what it's trying to build toward, and it just didn't keep my attention very much. So, alas, this one came in at number 6. Number 5, we have Claiming His Family by Rosa Mink. A whimpering cry slips through the night and into my tiny makeshift cabin. It's not pretty, but it's what I now call home. Has been for the last 2 years after I ran away from my pack, away from the torture they put me through. For 10 years I was the unwanted burden. They treated me worse than the lowest of the Omegas, all because who my mother was. They punished me for her supposed wrongdoings, of which they never did tell me all of them, only the one that was most grievous to them. My mother supposedly slept with a human and got pregnant with me. So this opening line doesn't focus on the detail that I think was far more important than the character's backstory, which was the fact that he hears a crying sound outside of his makeshift cabin. I feel like if I were in the protagonist's shoes, I wouldn't be thinking about my family history and my misbegotten birth and my mother's problems. I would be thinking about, hey, what's that sound? What's going on? It just didn't seem like a good spot to put a bunch of background info. There's a lot of those this month. A lot of openings that start with just a chunk of backstory when there's something more important going on. And then there was also a couple of mistakes in here, such as they treated me worse than the lowest of the Omegas, all because who my mother was. An of in there probably would have helped smooth that sentence over. And again, I don't know the protagonist yet, so maybe he doesn't have a particularly high education level, and maybe this level of prose is appropriate. I don't know. I just know that as an opening line in the paranormal romance genre, it didn't do it for me. Coming in at number 4, we have Love and Monsters by Raven Flanagan. It was a lovely night for a run through the local park. The wind was a calm breeze rustling the leaves together is a soft whisper. Through the breaks in the overhead branches, I caught glimpses of the intensely twinkling stars and a few wispy clouds floating across the full moon shining brightly on the park trail under my feet. So, while there were some pretty parts of this opening line, there were also several mistakes that distracted me from the story, and it opened on the weather, which, again, it's a risky move, and in this instance, I don't think the risk paid off. The word feet, the last word in this excerpt, is missing a period. There's also the sentence, the wind was a calm breeze rustling the leaves together is a soft whisper. I feel like there's some words missing there because that sentence just doesn't work. I like the scenic imagery. I just think that it needs to be gone over a few more times. Coming in 3rd place for the top 10 worst paranormal romance opening lines this month, we have Hold Me Close, Werewolf Romance, The Alpha's Hidden Baby by Kelvin Iwuchukwu. That's right, Waffle Romance. There is a typo in the title. Crystal's Point of View. My name is Crystal Lennox. I work at a large restaurant not far from home, serving there as a waitress. I live with my stepmother and stepfather. They are not really blood relatives, but my parents entrusted me to them because my stepparents love me so much. This year I turned 17, although I look 19. My parents are leaders of a wolf clan somewhere in Pasadena, but unlike them, I wasn't born with a wolf. I'm an ordinary human. Maybe that's why they sent me away, but I don't regret their decision at all. I live well here in California with humans, and my stepparents can't help but love me anyway. So this story starts out by introducing the character. My name is Crystal Lennox. Here is my job. Here is my backstory. But it doesn't bring us into a scene with a bang. It doesn't establish an emotional connection to the character. It just throws some information at us. I do think that this has the potential to be an interesting story. I would just really advise that perhaps it would be a better idea to not start with just an info dump about the character because we do not yet care about the character. Stylistically, the style just kind of plods along with a lack of sentence variation, which again Maybe that's the way that the character thinks and sees the world, but it just didn't really grip me. It just didn't look promising for an enjoyable style to spend a lot of time with. All right, moving right along. In second place, we have Prince of Shadows, a forbidden vampire romance by Arya Hutton. We were driving along a narrow, curving road surrounded by the leaves and vines of huge trees. Some banged on my window pane occasionally, and then slid across it as if it were a silent warning advising us to leave the road. The interior of the bus was unbearably hot, and the air conditioning button on my seat was out of order. I took off the thick wool sweater that I was wearing, staying with a tank top, and rested my head on my best friend's shoulder, exhaling strongly. You liked hiking, spending the afternoons in the country, bathing in the river, walk through the forest, and especially get away from our small town. Escaping the harsh reality that had become my life in recent months will be the only thing keeping me sane. That afternoon was the last we spent in the small rural town where we had stayed for several days as part of the summer activity. So there were several points in this opening where I stumbled. And again, thank you for the information surrounding the main character's circumstance, but I just didn't care about the character yet, so I don't really care what their summer activities are. I feel like a broken record at this point, all right? But yeah. Because I didn't yet have an emotional attachment to the protagonist, I didn't care about their whereabouts or summer activities. There were several typographical errors and spacing issues with this opening, and some of the sentences made my internal voice trip up. So this is likely a book that I would probably set aside. All right, and coming in first place for the top 10 worst opening lines in paranormal romance novels in January 2022, we have Alpha's Mate, a forbidden werewolf romance by Jade Hart. Hannah! The first thing I hear in my ear in the morning. Then I feel 75 pounds jump on top of me. Ugh, I moan and push the plague from me. What do you want, Lily? She laughs at me, the annoying 8-year-old sister way, and I roll my eyes. I slide my face under the pillow, not at all excited to get up on this dreaded morning. Can't you all leave me alone? I ask myself before I hear the water flowing. I shoot out of bed with big eyes and scared. Don't you dare, I begin before I am splashed with ice-cold water. She turns and runs down the hall, giggling like the vicious lunatic she is. I try to run after her, but slip and slam my butt, too. It's one thing to have a typo or a misspelling in your opening line, but having one in your title? I mean, at least this book introduced us with some sort of action fairly immediately. I know there are many people who advise against introducing the opening line with some dialogue. I don't particularly care about that. At least there's the threat of some sort of trouble for the protagonist. I mean, she's gonna get doused in ice water by her annoying younger sister if she doesn't get up. It's just there were so many mistakes in this opening that I was really distracted by them. I will forgive a typo in other places in a book, but when it's right there up front and center, it makes me question whether or not I can trust this storyteller with my time. It wasn't particularly romantic, and it didn't really give me paranormal romance vibes. So for these reasons, this book came in at number 1. Not to mention the misspelling of werewolf on the cover. Well, there we have it. The top 10 best and the top 10 worst opening lines in paranormal romance for January 2022. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more like it, please like this video, comment below, share it, subscribe to my channel, and ring that bell. I try to post new videos every Wednesday about the books that I'm reading, my writing vlog, complete with bullet journals and all sorts of other charts, along with anything else that I think might interest you. Thank you so much for joining me here today, and I will see you in my next video.